Christian. Okay, don't know what's that circle mean. Okay, this is the unbeliever. Now, the unbelieving world say man and the world came through evolution. The faithful Christian says man came through creation. Correct? By and large today, people believe in this. Now, understand that up to a certain period in human history, man always accepted, mankind, whether you believe in the Christian God or not, but man generally always accepted that the concept of God, that there is God. Which God is the question, but they always accepted the concept there is God. And how we came about? God created this world. God created man. So in the point of history, man always accepted that. You look at the Old Testament and all that, ancient history, people just accept the concept of a God. They may worship other gods, but still the concept of God is always there. Okay? Now, so over time, in history, there was the time of reasoning. Okay? The age where people emphasized reasoning, the 17th century. Now, at this time, people began to move away from they moved away from the study of theology, right? The study of God, and they focused more and more on science. Okay? So, in the past, people would think about God, talk about God. Then, in the age of reasoning, so they say we must reason. So, there was an emphasis on science. People studied science, talk about science. Revolution ideas came about science. Then next came the period of Enlightenment. Okay? Enlightenment. Now, in the period of Enlightenment, the focus was now on the intellectual thinking. Okay, the mind. Okay, the mind was always a curious thing to people, so they kept studying about the mind and thinking. And at this time, not only was the study of God de-emphasized, now people must move away from superstitions. All right? So people began to view religion, God, the concept of the supernatural world as superstitious things. Because science is what you can see and you can prove. You can't prove the spiritual realm, so they say, well, the spiritual realm is a superstitious thing based on science. Okay? So they moved away from that. Now, and at this time, there was this focus on revolutionary ideas. Means anything that is, I think in school you learn this word, out of the box. You must think out of the box, right? Think out of the box. People have always accepted God, always accepted the concept of God. Now, by the time we reach here, people began to say we must question tradition. Anything that is traditional thought, we should question it. Is it true or not? Is it true or not? So we must think outside the box. People always say that there is a God. Why must we say that there is God? Everything is wild, right? So all sorts of philosophical ideas came, and like black. Why is black black? Maybe black is white. Why is white white? All sorts of, you just have to question anything that is accepted as, has always been accepted, okay? So it's that kind of thinking. Now, so it come to a point where, sorry, I hope you all can see. Okay, continue here. Time of modernism. So we must be modern now. And in modernism, it went to outright rejection of religion. So it went from reduced study of theology, increase intellectual, reject anything in the spiritual realm, call everything in the spiritual realm superstitious, must question the concept of God, and then by the time in the age of modernism, it simply reject religion. Okay? Religion is a superstitious thing. Now, here, in fact, at this time is where rebel against rules. Rebel against rules. So here is think outside of the box. By the time here is rebel, not question anymore. Rebel against rules. So by the time this, a lot of very rebellious movements were happening, and then morals in the society were dropping. Okay? So this is basically a quick, high-level concept of history. Now, why do I say all this? Why do I have to say all this when we talk about evolution and creation? Actually, can you see? Now, all the while, pretty much during this period, for a person to say that there is no God, you will be viewed in society as a strange person. Understand? You'll be rejected as cuckoo. Not normal. Not normal. Because people ask, if there's no God, then where did we come from? So people always associated our existence to God. Okay, that's why they will worship God. And you say no God, they think you're mad. It's just like if I take this microphone and it works and all that, and I say, oh, there is no one who designed this, no one behind designing this, no one behind manufacturing this, no one behind putting this together. It just appeared. You will say that the person is mad, right? So that is how people always view all this. How did the world come about? It's far more complex than a microphone. How did man come about? Our human body is so complex, yet so wonderful. You eat, it absorbs nutrients, throw out rubbish. All right? So they said there is a supreme intelligent creator. So people always accepted that. For anyone to say no, in fact at that time, for you to say no, there's no such thing as God, or you worship anything else, or you have any cultish idea, you'll be burned on the stake. All right? People who say no God, they'll be burned on the stake. You say you are satanic. Anyone say no God, satanic, burn him on the stake, kind of thing. So that is the concept. But now, Satan has two things that he wants to achieve in the Bible. We always read, right? One is to turn man to false god, which is actually to worship him. To worship Satan. All right? Worship Satan. That's one. He asked Christ, worship me. All right? He wants to be God. Basically that. That's his objective. From the beginning, he fell because he wanted to be God. Right? Now, the second thing is, if you don't want to worship him, but he still wants you to go to hell with him, so the second thing is to find a way to say, then if you don't want to worship me, then I want you to think that there is no such thing as God. Okay? Because you worship him, you go to hell. You say no God, you don't search for God, you don't get saved, you go to hell. So in the Bible, you will see Satan always wanting to achieve those two things so that you go to hell with him. Okay? So now, all the while, people accepted the concept of God, and God created the world. How can Satan cause men who, at that time, if you say there's no God, you're satanic and get burned, and yet create the concept of no God. All the while reject. So as society change in its thinking, it must come to a point now. And if Satan were to introduce the concept of evolution before this, men will reject it. Understand that? But by here, where men say there is no such thing as God, we hate religion, we rebel against anything that is always accepted, we question it. By this time, when he introduced evolution, the concept of evolution, evolution means God did not create this world, correct? Things came about by itself. What is evolution? You look at your book, so just quickly. Okay, page 13, new book, page 39, old book, page 13. Now, the process of evolution. Evolution, broadly defined, is a theory of speculation that all things have been formed by a gradual process of change, modification through natural processes over a long period of time, hundreds or millions of years from pre-existing materials. All right? So, very broadly, this is how people would define evolution. You can see, right? Okay. Now, so means it is not God that created. It is things pre-existing, then they all mix for millions of years or billions of years, and then finally some by pure chance, right? A singular cell of life was formed. Okay? Now it's a bit like that now. So chairs have no life, right? Things no life. So if I say I put a lot of chairs, a lot of tables, a lot of markers, a lot of clocks, and you mix them up, keep mixing them up for millions and millions of years, then a life form, a single cell life form was formed. Okay, basically that's what it is. So from material things, non-living things, a living thing was formed, and from there everything else evolved. All species evolved from there. So that's the concept. It means God did not create, things evolved over millions of years. If he introduced this concept before this, it will be thrown out of the window. But at this time, in the year of 1859, that is when a man called who? Charles Darwin, all right? Charles Darwin, he wrote this concept of things coming together and they evolved. Now, in fact, when he wrote it, people in his mind, he would think that people would reject it, would laugh at it, would think he's mad, all right? So he wrote it. But when he published it, the world was so excited about it because the world has now reached this stage. There's no such thing as God. Now how did man come about? Hey, now this so-called scientist, or so this researcher, is telling us how we came about. So the whole world got very excited and everybody just ate it up, chewed it up, swallowed it, and loved it. Even Charles Darwin himself was shocked. He expected to be rejected and laughed at, but he was shocked himself that the world was so excited about it. Because men in their mind have changed so much in their thinking that by the time this come out, Satan will time it such that by the time this come out, give Darwin the concept, the ideas, when he write it, the world will love it. So now he is able to achieve no God. Understand that? He's able to achieve no God. The concept of no God. Because if you say no God, then how did we come about? No one could answer that question. If you say no God, 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 how did we come about? Concept of evolution. So they were very excited. Now, why do I explain all this? Because the Christian have to be very clear. The Christian must have the Christian biblical view. I try to learn this word. There is a world view. All right, there's a world view. The world views the world. The world views everything, philosophy, anything, with a view from the world's perspective. Now, the Christian must have the correct worldview. The Christian must have a biblical view. A biblical view. The Christian must have a biblical view. Okay, now you turn to page 12 at the bottom. All right, page 28 for the new book, page 12. Okay, can you see science cannot tell us anything about origins? Okay, shall we read that together? If we want to know anything about origins, there's only one way. Get it from the one who was present at the event. He has to be an eyewitness to the origin of our world. We must depend on God, the great first cause, the Creator. Only He can tell us about origins. Okay? Now, what is this saying? How do you know what happened at the beginning? How do you know how this world was created? How do you know? Okay, maybe I'll ask you, how do you know how this church was built? You and I exist now. We do not know how the church was built, right? But there were people that were the ones that built the church. They were eyewitnesses. There were people that saw, correct? So if you want to say, hey, how did this part of the building come up? Ask the person who was there, correct? Ask the person who was there. Who was there at the creation of the world? Let me ask you, who? No one. No one. We have not existed. Man was not created on the first day. The only being that was there at the beginning, at the creation of the universe and the world, is God Himself, right? So, if you want to say, how did this world come about? The only person that can tell you accurately how this world came about, or this universe came about, how man came about, is none other than the Creator Himself. Ask anyone, no use, right? So we can only trust one source, and the Creator's description of how the world came about, correct? So, how did the world come about? Let's turn to Genesis chapter 1. How did the world come about? Genesis chapter 1. Now, very simple. Verse 1. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form, and so on, and so on. And God said, let there be, and so on. So God simply says, the person who created the universe, the source, who can tell you accurately how the universe came into existence, is God. And God says, in the beginning, nothing existed. I created. I created. I spoke in verse 3, and light, the concept, the existence of light came into being. So at one time, there's no such thing as light. There's no such thing as darkness. Okay, so God say, I tell you, this is how the world came to existence. And then God says, how did He create man? Okay, He simply says that He created man through speaking that man would from dust. Now look at chapter 1, verse 26. Now, how did man come about? God said, let us make man in our, let's read together. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our own likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. That's it. God says, verse 27, let's read together. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created him. Male and female created He them. So God simply says, I created. God didn't say they evolved. God didn't say through millions of years. God says, on this particular day of creation, I created him out of dust. That's it. So you ask, how did this part of the building came about? Okay? Then we find the person who was here when this building was erected. Then he said, oh, you know, first we built the back part, and then we built this part, then we built this part, and then we had these pillars and all that set up and all that. Now he is the source. But I come and tell you, oh, no. You know, actually how this part came about is this part came first, then that part came first. No, we didn't have pillars, that kind of thing. Is my word any use? No use. Because I was not there. I'm talking rubbish. Only the person that was there when he gave the account is true. Okay? It's true. Now, why do I tell you all this? Because until the Christian in your own heart must always have this very strong conviction. God, the Creator, said, I created. I spoke and it came to existence. It is not millions of years of evolution. First day I spoke, light came into existence. He is the source. I simply believe. That's it. Okay? But over time, the Christian worldview began to change. Remember the new evangelicals? The new evangelicals? We study about new evangelicals, right? As the world moved away from God and creation to no God and evolution, the world was moving that way. The Christians had a dilemma. The Christians began to say, hey, hang on, the whole world is going full steam, believing in evolution, but here we are talking about creation. 6 days, billions of years. Then the Christian began to say, hang on, this is very embarrassing. Because people think that evolution is scientific. We talk about it afterwards. Is evolution scientific or not? Maybe I ask Daniel afterwards, all right? What is science? But because people keep thinking, hey, science, so-called science, keep talking about us coming through evolution, the Christian, it looks a bit silly saying that, hey, God just say light, and light came about. God say man, and man came about. It's very silly. We are living in a scientific age. So the Christians began to now marry evolution and creation. What do I mean by that? Just now you circled the word theistic evolution, right? The Christian now began to say, theistic evolution means God used evolution to create this world and man. So now they can marry these two. How did God create? God created through evolution. This is theistic evolution, okay? So, do you believe, can the Christian believe in theistic evolution? If you believe in theistic evolution, then your worldview is this. Your worldview is, God said all this I created in Genesis 1 and 2. God said I created, but I believe that the world is right, the world concept is right, what God says is not right, and I use the world concept to explain the Bible. Now I want to emphasize this. The Christian's worldview must always be, God says this, I stand on what God says. I don't care what man or the world says. I simply take God at His word. Okay, that's it. The world may say evolution. Even other Christians may begin to say evolution, God created to evolution, but I simply take it, the person that existed then, or God existed then, He said this is how He came into the world, I accept that, that's it, full stop. Okay, so that must be our worldview. New evangelicals began to accept this, and that's where they fell. That's where they fell. That's why I kept saying, God says biblical separation, correct? The moment we think we are smarter, we go over the other side and try and convince them, we will fall. That is exactly what Harold Ockenga felt. He said, fundamentalists, you are too square. You're too square. We got to try and convince them. Instead of separating, he went over to try and convince them. In a few months, he himself believed in theistic evolution. So, evolution, for a Christian to believe in evolution is to say, I don't believe what God says. That's it. Now, I want to ask, what is the problem with believing in evolution? What is the problem? Okay, so quickly, history went from age of reasoning, age of enlightenment, age of modernism. This is how people began to change, and the Christian began to change with the world instead of separating. Now, what is the problem with believing in theistic evolution? What do you think is the problem? A Christian who believes in theistic evolution. Red is not good, cannot see. Daniel, what do you think is the problem? Say again?
It's like not 100% sure it's proven.
Okay, so after we come to that, so Daniel say, it's not 100% sure. Evolution is not 100% sure because evolution has not been proven. Correct? Now, when you believe in theistic evolution, the first and foremost thing is you deny the creating power of God. You steal God's glory. Remember we studied last few lessons about God? God is omnipotent. God's omnipotence, his power is shown in He simply spoke and the universe came into existence, correct? That is the power of God. That's how powerful. God don't need to wait. Let me see, put all these things together. Wait. Millions of years. Finally one cell came about. God can bring a full human being into existence just by speaking. That's it. That is the glorious power of God. Understand that? When you believe in evolution as a Christian, you say you let a human a human invention steal God's glory. Number two, what else do you think is the problem? What else? If evolution is true, means the Garden of Eden, the story of Garden of Eden, is it true? God created Adam, right? Then God created Eve, right? Put them in the Garden of Eden, right? Means the Garden of Eden story is false, because it's evolution. It's evolution. So Garden of Eden, that's why the modernist Christian, they have to allegorize everything. Garden of Eden is just a wonderful story, to paint a beautiful picture. No, the Garden of Eden is a real event in mankind's history. If Garden of Eden is false, the story of Garden of Eden is false, what else is false, Eugene? The fall of man. The fall of man never existed. The fall of man never existed. Because there was no Garden of Eden. What fall of man? Again, fall of man is another allegorical story. Now, do you know why today there are Christians who do not believe in sin? Do you know that? The concept of sin, they say don't talk about sin. Sin is just a concept, it's not real. Because of all this. Because evolution led to many things. Okay? What sin? There's no fall. God just used this as a story to tell us to be good. That's all. There's no fall means what? Actually, no fall means no need for Savior. No need for Savior. No need for Savior, right? No fall. Savior for what? Jesus is just a man that showed his good example in sacrificing himself for society. That's all. No need for Savior. Now, this whole thing became eventually, in society, became no need for God. There's no such thing as no need for God. Because it's all a concept. That's why liberalism can even reach a stage where they say this whole concept about God and all that is about the social gospel. It's about being good in society. That's why they focus on society, not on God. So this whole concept, when a Christian believes in theistic evolution, he must then say God did not create. If you want to believe in theistic evolution, because I had a Christian who came up to me, why can't a Christian believe in theistic evolution? Why cannot? Because if you believe that, then you have to believe that the Garden of Eden fall is just a story. You have to believe that man did not fall. You have to believe that there is no such thing as sin. You have to believe eventually there is no such thing as God. The whole thing about Christianity is just something to teach you to be good. That's why you end up in the social gospel. All right? So for a Christian to say, why cannot? So you write this down. Because sometimes I wonder, you keep going to school and they keep telling you about evolution. Then you hear Christians talk about theistic evolution. Then you say, why must BPCWA insist that theistic evolution, God created through evolution, is false? Why can't we believe that? Because if you want to believe that, you have to believe all this. You cannot not believe these things. Understand that? So the Christian cannot believe in theistic evolution. Now, so with that, I established two things this morning. One, what is the Christian's worldview? When God says, He's the one who was there, I believe His version. You want to believe my version about how this building came about, or you want to believe the version of someone who really was an eyewitness? Of course you want to believe him, right? Then they ask you, okay, Daniel. So your friends say, Daniel, I'm a Christian. I believe in theistic evolution. They say, no, I believe in creation. Then your friends say, but God, because I believe in God's version, right? Then I say, no. I believe in the evolution version. Then you say, but, Daniel, were you there when God created the world? No, right? So how can you believe that? So what will you ask me?
Because it's a trick.
It's a trick. Okay. Now, what would you ask the friend? Susan, what will you ask your friend? If your friend keeps saying, but Susan, you were not there when God created, right? So why you believe in that version?
What would I ask my friend?
Yeah, what will you ask in return?
I'll ask him.
Because it's true, you were not there, right? You look quite young, so I don't think you're there. Say again?
I'll ask if she was there.
You will also ask her, were you there when things evolved? Right? Now my point is, do you understand my question or not? If people keep asking you, but you were not there, what? You were not there when God created, so why you believe that? Then you ask the same question. Were you there when things evolved? Just as much as I have faith in God, you want to believe in evolution, you also have to put your faith in something that you yourself did not see at all. Understand that? So both are faith. So Christian, at the end of the day, the Christian worldview is about faith. Do you understand that? That's why God says, without what it is impossible to please God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. The Christian must go by faith. Actually, they are also putting their faith in something. Okay? So, now, is evolution scientific? That is the question. Because Christians and the world say evolution is scientific. So if you don't believe in evolution, you are not scientific. And then the Christian panic. Hey, we live in age of science. We should be scientific. And then we are told that we are superstitious. We are not scientific. You believe in God creating, you're superstitious. All right, so Daniel, how do you answer that? What is science?
Science is how the world, everything is real.
Science is about things that are real. Science is about things that are real. Okay? Yes, that is correct. Now, let us look at page 12 or page 28. Page 12, new book, page 28. What is science? Okay, what is science? Can you see what is science? The question, third paragraph. Let's read together. No, what is science? Chambers 20th Century Dictionary. Can you see that now? Defines it as the following. Knowledge ascertained by observation and experiment, critically tested, systematized, and brought under general principles. This is a definition of science. What does it mean? When you say something is scientific, by definition in the world, scientific means You can observe. Okay, like Daniel said, it's something real. You can observe. It is real. How real is it? You can put experiments to it. You can test it very rigorously, and then you can have systematic way of categorizing that event, and eventually you can file it under a principle. What it means is you can always repeat and prove that this thing is real. Understand? So you say water. How do we know water is made up of 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part of oxygen? Am I right? Yes, how?
Because people have made it.
Because people can repeatedly through experiment, repeatedly prove, test, 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part of oxygen. Test again, always the same, repeatedly the same. Then they come to the conclusion, this is real. You can prove it, right? So, that's the meaning of science. So is evolution science? Is evolution science? Till today, they cannot evolve anything. Now, evolution is this. Evolution cannot explain origin. Understand that? Evolution simply says things existed, and then these things came together, big explosion, life was formed. But so evolution can never tell you where were the pre-existing things. They cannot. Christianity tells you, God says, in the beginning, before there was anything that existed, I created. That's it. So science wants to avoid that question. Science cannot answer that question. Now, moreover, is evolution scientific? Next week we see. Can you say that evolution is scientific? But school say this is science. It's in science class, right? Evolution. So is it scientific? So next week we will see. Can the Christians say it is scientific? Don't get threatened when people say Christianity is not scientific. Evolution, because you don't believe in evolution. So next week we'll see what it is. Okay, so I think we take a bit of time here because everyone is learning about evolution. The Christian begin to be moved and say, yes, I think we should believe because it's scientific. So we continue next week. Let us pray. Now, someone asked, what is the difference between psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs? Someone also asked, can we just have instrumental music? Can we worship God with instrumental music?